Is the NBA boring to watch? Draymond apparently thinks so. We're going to talk about that here today because I thought it was pretty interesting and I wanted to cover it. But first, make sure you do subscribe here to the Basketball Bulletin because Trevor and I put out a ton of awesome content you're not going to want to miss. 80% of viewers aren't subscribed, and it does help us out. So make sure you do hit that subscribe if you are a part of that 80. We'd appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support. That being said, I wanted to kind of talk about this because we've done videos in the past where we talk about the NBA and its watchability. Is it boring? We've talked about why the ratings would be down. We've talked about things like the three-point shooting, the small ball is something that some people have said. We actually had a lot of responses as to why people themselves said that they weren't watching. Some of it was politics, go woke, go broke type thing. Just a lot of different reasons. But I don't know that any of that in particular relates to Draymond and his own response here, but I wanted to cover that. So I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure you do hit that thumbs up, like I said, as well. And before we jump in, let's go ahead and give a shout out to today's video sponsor, Prize Picks. So in order to play, all you guys have to do is use the promo code Bulletin, and you guys will get $50 off when you pay your first $5. So when you play your first five, you guys will get that. There's a ton of different picks available, whether you're interested in the All-Star game, three-point shootout, etc. You know what? Last time we did the All-Star game, I have no idea who's going to win the three-point shooting because it's just there's so much variance here. But round one points are available here. So what I'll say is we'll pick a few of these guys. So first things first, I'm going to pick Dame. 25 seems really high. It's actually the highest bar here. You know what? I'm going to say he's blisteringly hot. We'll go more for Dame. Buddy Hield, 23.5. We typically oftentimes ride the Buddy Hield roller coaster, but you know what? I'm going to be a hater today, and I'm going to say less. Last but not least, my guy Cade Cunningham is here, and I'm really excited about him finally getting all-star recognition. I'll say more. That's a fun 3-pick play. So if you guys wanted to play that or something similar, again, you guys can do that through the link in the description, Prize Picks. And when you guys sign up, use the code Bulletin to get your discount. All right, let's go ahead and get back to it. All right, so we've got the entire statement from Draymond. So Draymond had just spoken for a few minutes Saturday morning about the state of the game, about how he believes it is officiated differently than it once was, how stars don't get the benefit of being stars like they did in the past. That actually, low-key, is kind of true. The superstar whistle, there's some guys that still have it, and there are some guys that obviously get better whistles than they should, but there's a lot of like superstars that don't get anywhere near the free throws that they used to, or that they should probably be getting, especially when you watch them on a night in, night out basis. You're like, hey, that guy's getting hacked. Like, I think Jokic could stand to get a few more. I think the same could be said for LeBron and Steph. And there's obviously variance, like where the guy primarily plays, etc. But that doesn't mean just because they take a bunch of threes, that doesn't mean they don't get hacked all the time, right? So I think that's the case for a lot of guys, right? And then the 4-time champion with the Warriors was asked a simple question: does he think the NBA is boring? He said, absolutely. Such is the challenge that the NBA is trying to fend off right now. The notion that the era of high-scoring games, more three-pointers than ever before, and a lack of rock'em sock'em physicality like there was a couple of generations ago is hurting the product. On the one hand, the NBA is about to enter a new series of broadcasting streaming deals that will generate at least $76 billion, about 3 times more than the last deal. So interest still obviously exists. Player salaries are bigger than ever. The league keeps setting attendance records, and merchandise keeps flying off the shelves. It's quite the catch-22, isn't it? Why do you guys think it is that ratings can be down, but everything else, as you just read, or as I just read, money wise is up? It's kind of crazy. Some of that is just obviously the times we live in, inflation, blah blah blah. But still, you can't. Attendance records are being set, merchandise records are being set. I mean, I saw a post a few weeks ago that Bronny James has sold 500,000 jerseys already. But yeah, it's interesting to see that the product is quote unquote boring. The product has deteriorated, and we've had this talk for a lot of different years, where it's like all the stoppages, all the free throws, all the reviews, all these other things, all the 3-point shooting, the 120 points per game, the lack of defenses, and the way that defenses have been limited. Like, this is something that is not new. you could genuinely, I could genuinely sit here for an hour and talk about this. I can, because there's so many bullet points you can list off. But at the end of the day, while that stuff's going one way, everything else is going the opposite direction, which is interesting, right? I think some of that's also because the NBA has so much value on the internet, on social media. They're one of the best, if not the best, honestly, leagues at marketing through that. And then secondly, they also have so much global appeal too, right? So that's kind of where things are a little bit interesting. And then lastly, when you look at just flat rating numbers, there's such a sheer volume of games that are played. All these teams are playing 80 games, and then there's another, postseason. A lot of fans probably don't even tune in until the postseason because the regular season has been devalued. A lot of fans don't really see value in watching all those games. Maybe they're not available to watch all those games because there's just so many of them. And then let alone the fact it's actually hard to watch a lot of these games in the first place because blackouts and things. Like, seriously, we could have this conversation for a really, really, really long time about just the product as a whole. Not so much the boring piece, but just the product as a whole. We could talk about for a while. The NBA keeps hearing the question about the on-court product, and Green is among those that think issues exists. He cited an interview he recently saw with a late Kobe Bryant, who died in 2020, called the game accidental basketball. I don't remember that. I'm going to have to check that out. It's all penetrate and pitch, Bryant said in the interview. You may make the shot, you may not. He couldn't have been more right. Yeah, is he saying it's like read and react, drive and kick? Yeah, that's what the game is for a lot of teams now. And I've said it before in the previous videos we've covered that, like, at the end of the day, most fans just look at it like, oh, these guys are just shooting 45, 53, whatever it is on any given night. And that's true. Like, they're shooting an abnormal amount of threes. That's because analytics said, okay, well, 3 is better than 2. And even if you make this shot like a third of the time, it's still better than you taking those mid-range shots, right? But I think that in doing that, you miss the beauty of the mid-range shot, because I thought that is where a lot of these guys made their bread. That's where some of the most iconic shots are from. And I do think there's still value in that shot today, especially if you're able to get that shot off at will. Think of guys like Shea, who's able to get there to his spots, or like a Kawhi. He's able to get to his spots and be money from those spots, right? And Kobe himself was also somebody that made his bread there. But now the game is drive and kick. And so while these guys are shooting all these threes, I will say, I think it's a mistake to think that they're all getting there the same way. The process is different. The NBA teams run a lot of the same stuff, but they don't all run the same systems, right? And they don't run the same plays. They don't get to all this stuff the exact same way. It's just the end result winds up being drive, kick, 3. Boom. That's what we're going for. That's what you want. You want to try to manipulate the defense, get the defense to rotate, and force an error somewhere to where you can get an open shot that's, like I said, going to go in for a good shooter 40% of the time or so. And it's kind of crazy because now we're seeing a lot of guys that are shooting above 40%, where 40% was the gold standard. And maybe they're not taking 10 threes a game, but they're taking a good volume of them. And they're shooting like 43, 44, 45%. It's kind of crazy, right? He couldn't have been more right. Green talked about a recent Golden State game against LeBron and the Lakers and how it was refreshing to go against a thinker like James, who was notorious for finding weaknesses and exploiting them. Every possession is some type of chess move, Green says. You don't get that in today's NBA often. You don't just get that on a regular basis. It's just who can run faster, who can hit more threes. It's no substance. I think it's boring. That's fair. I do think that's fair. And I think that type of basketball that LeBron largely popularized, which was the mismatch seeking chess move type of basketball that other stars have really, really been able to capitalize on. And he's not the first guy to do it, but he really popularized in today's space era, pick and roll play, all that stuff, where he's doing this inverted screen. He's going to call your point guard over to set a screen for him, things like that. Luka also absolutely controls games like that. There's not a lot of guys in the league that can do that, period. I'm not sure that that's a knock on the product on court. It's just more or less these guys just aren't able to play that way, or they just don't have the ability to do so. Maybe they will eventually. I'm not sure. But then that gets into a whole other subtopic of these guys, I think a lot of the fundamentals are gone just in general from the game, which does impact the on-court product. I talk about the mid-range shot, but what about the post play? Like, this is quote unquote the most skilled era ever. And I can understand that from a dribbling and deep shooting perspective, but I also think it's the least skilled era from more fundamental parts, like around the basket, because as analytics have told us that you need to be able to dribble, shoot, pass from deep, of course, dribble and shoot from deep. All these guys are growing up doing that with less of a focus on pivots, all these other things. I mean, I watch basketball on a nightly basis, and it's kind of crazy how bad these guys are at just simple things like a post entry pass. Like, it's hilarious. They're really bad at it, and I don't understand why. It's such a basic thing. Actually, I guess I'm making the point why, but maybe that has also impacted the on-court product. But I think that we're just in a different day and age today, where I think a lot of fans also are, like I said, we could talk about this for so long. But I think a lot of fans are also just attuned to wanting to watch something that is more fast paced, which is why we have shifted more into this pace space and 3-point shooting era. But I do think we'll have to rein things back. We're going to have to give defenses more flexibility and allow these guys to play more physically. We don't need to see both teams shooting 25, 30 free throws a night. We don't need all those stoppages. Like, I think we're going to need to kind of reach a balance. And the good news is Adam Silver himself is aware of that. He said so earlier this year, where he thought that maybe offenses are just a little bit too free now. But overall, though, I wanted to cover this because I did think it was an interesting topic that, like I said, we've talked about before. I don't personally think games are boring. I still get a ton of fun watching my favorite players out there, just finding ways to dominate and the ways that they produce what they can. And that's one of my favorite things about basketball personally, is that it's a team sport, yes, but I feel like on any given night, you can have the best player on your side of the court, and he could turn the entire tide of the game for you in a way that maybe isn't something that happens as often in other sports, in my opinion. So that's just me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you were new. And if you guys want to see a recent video that I did where NBA GMs are salty, I guess, about the Lakers getting Luka Doncic, you guys can check that out right now on your screen before you go. I'll see you guys over there.